In this documentary, we would like to show you the most exciting moments of three important international offshore powerboat races of the 1977 season. The Alitalia Chiga Hotel team took part with its two drivers, Francesco Cosentino and Guido Nicolai, their navigators and mechanics, and those two splendid boats, Alitalia Uno and Alitalia Due, each 38 feet long and constructed in lightweight alloy by Picchiotti of Viareggio. This team won victories and excellent placing in races that took them from European seas to Key West and the turbulent waters of the Gulf Stream, where the final of the World Championship was held. We will see the first offshore trophy race over a course of 170 nautical miles from Venice to Trieste and back. The organizer of this big event was the Chiga Hotel Company, together with the Venice Motorboat Club. Then we'll move to England for that classic The Cows to Torquay race, and lastly, to Florida for the Key West Tortugas, the World Championship final. The last hours before an offshore race are spent on the haulings. Here, preparations go on in the midst of a continual coming and going of technicians, journalists, and spectators. It's like a ritual. The specifications of the motor, the driver's licenses, the equipment which each boat must carry, all have to be checked. The boats are lowered into the water and hoisted out again several times in a matter of hours for compass checks, tightening the cylinder head, or to try out and select the most suitable propeller. The whole offshore racing organization, with its sponsors, its drivers, and its mechanics, is caught up in this Grand Prix atmosphere. Each team has an equipment truck with a trailer for the boat, a complete workshop on wheels. Each truck bears the name and emblem of a team: Alitalia, Chiga Hotel, Picchiotti, Cedro Tassoni, Roberta Di Camerino. An interesting characteristic of offshore powerboat racing, ever since the first events were held in Miami, Florida in 1957, is that the drivers are amateurs. Nonetheless, they all have the skill and tenacity of professionals and the sense of fair play you find in show jumping. The boats that will line up for the start tomorrow, now going out for trials and final touches to the engine, are the finest craft and drivers to be found in offshore racing today. It is the first time that the waters of the Malamocco Lagoon, of Albarella, of the Lido, of Trieste, have been seared by these missiles. 8 to 11 meters long, streaking at 70 to 85 knots, that's 150 kilometers an hour. Their powerful engines open at full throttle. The 600 horsepower of the second-class craft, the 1,300 horsepower of the first class, like the Alitalia Chiga Hotel team's two Picchiotti 38-footers, easily recognizable by their metal hulls. The Englishman Mike Doxford's saffron-colored Limit-Up 77 and the 36-foot cigarette of Giulio De Angelis. Only Tommaso De Simone's UFO 33 has twin 380 horsepower BPM engines. The two catamarans, Stefano Signoretti's My Coup de Topolino and the Arci Diavolo of Tognelli and Sokol, have single 600 horsepower Mercruiser engines. Luigi Zannoni's White Bird carries a 600 horsepower Era Marine engine. Calm waters nearly always encourage high speeds, but are a serious danger for the engines. Those who like to go at full throttle often get completely carried away by their desire to keep up with the leader. In calm water, a good catamaran can often do better than a boat with a single deep V-shaped keel. In choppy or even rough water, the reverse is usually the case. Only two boats are competing in the third-class offshore race over a 65-mile course. The Fletcher, with two 150 horsepower Mercury outboard engines of the present champion Tombolini, and Zaccaria, the hydrojet of Guarducci and Fantuccini. Lastly come the tiny Fim jets, a class using exclusively 90 horsepower Ford Castaldi jet engines. The day ends with the briefing. The organizers tell the crews all about the course, the marker and turning buoys, navigational restrictions. Also about the air and sea rescue craft that will patrol the whole course on the day of the race. The 170-mile circuit for the first and second-class boats starts from the strip of lagoon facing the Hotel Excelsior Lido and follows the coast to Malamocco and then on to Albarella. It then repasses in front of the Lido, reaches the Trieste buoy and returns to the Lido finishing line. It's the day of the race. At 10:06, all the boats start, including those in the Fimjet class, which are darting away like arrows. Thousands of spectators are scattered along the whole length of the course. Return lap from Albarella, the two crews of Alitalia Chiga Hotel are in the lead as they pass the rotonda of the Hotel Excelsior Lido, followed by Stefano Signoretti's catamaran, De Simone's standard type UFO 33, Luigi Zannoni's White Bird, and Tognelli and Sokol's Arci Diavolo, the yellow and red catamaran designed by Renato Levi for the Aquaviva boatyard. While the first and second class boats race on towards Trieste, the third-class race, over a much shorter course, finishes with the victory of the pair Tombolini-Bonara, followed by Guarducci-Fantuccini. After only 19 miles, Cosentino is in the lead, followed by Nicolai, Signoretti, Tognelli, De Simone, and Zannoni. sea is like a sheet of glass, which encourages the drivers to step up the pace. Stefano Signoretti in his second-class boat is now running alongside the OP1s. Offshore powerboat racing is a duel against the sea, but above all against oneself, reviving the myth of man surviving only by dominating the elements. Speed developed on the sea is equivalent to about 3 times the same speed on land. When a boat which has hit a wave with the full force of its engines crashes down, the whole weight of the craft, and this is about 4 or 5 tons, is transmitted through the steering column to the knees and hands of the driver. The impact is sometimes so violent that it can result in bruises and fractures for drivers and navigators, unless, of course, the effects have been neutralized by synchronized bending of the legs. A driver's ability, especially in a rough sea, is in knowing how to dose the throttle. Every wave needs a different amount of gas, because every wave is different. An offshore powerboat, racing at full speed, can actually fly over the water for a distance of 15 to 20 meters. One of the most frequent risks for an offshore driver is that his boat spins completely round. It can happen when the rudder breaks or when an engine seizes up. Both driver and crew risk being catapulted out of the boat at the speed it was traveling when it stopped. Most powerboats are forced to give up because of mechanical troubles caused by the excessive speed necessary during the first part of the race. Giulio De Angelis is the first victim of the full throttle and the flat, calm water. The second to give up is Mike Doxford's Limit Up 77. While we wait for the boats to round the Trieste buoy, a group of parachutists from the Venice Aero Club, holding the finals of their parachute jumping championship on the very same day as the race, give a display of collective jumping in honor of those participating in the first offshore powerboat trophy from Venice to Trieste and back. With them, we discover Venice and all its splendors. The hotels of the Chiga Company, famous all over the world. The Danieli. The Gritti. The Regina, the Europa. They all look over the Grand Canal, close to Piazza San Marco and the Bridge of Sighs. And here are the boats again as they round the Trieste buoy for the return run to Venice. In the lead is Stefano Signoretti's catamaran Mai Cude, but Signoretti has given his engine a beating and before long has to retire. Right behind, in second place, comes Francesco Cosentino, going fast but steadily, in Alitalia Uno, followed by Alitalia Due with Guido Nicolai. And Luigi Zanoni's OP2 White Bird, which is running a great race. While the 4 boats speed over the last lap towards Venice, we continue our flight of discovery, this time to the Lido. There below, beautifully situated on that gleaming expanse of golden sand, are 2 more illustrious names in the Chiga Hotel group, the Hotel des Bains and the Excelsior.
quasi uno, equipaggio Cosentino Wilson all'Italia Ciga Hotels, che percorre la distanza di miglia 159,500 in 2 ore 30 primi 55 secondi e 51 centesimi alla media oraria di chilometri 117,433. Al secondo posto Zanoni Lanzani, che ha percorso in 3 ore 31 primi 8 secondi e 17 centesimi alla media di chilometri 83,940. Al terzo posto si è classificato Nicolai Pescaglini in 3 ore 54 primi 40 secondi alla media di chilometri 64,100. Per la classe 3 invece la classifica è primo Tombolini Bonora in 1 ora 43 primi 45 secondi e 27 centesimi alla media di miglia 35,564.
Big Ben welcomes you to London, and it is only a few miles from here to the Isle of Wight. From the blue waters of the Adriatic to the blue-green of the English Channel to the 17th Embassy Daily Express Trophy. This time the racecourse is the Isle of Wight and the Solent. Here, the heart of the racing scene is Cowes, cradle of English yachting and home of the most famous and most exclusive yacht club in the world, the Royal Yacht Squadron. Here again, the same preliminary rites are going on. Drivers, mechanics, organizers, all caught up in the fervor of preparations, are busy around the boats, inspecting every corner, listening to the throb of the engines, replacing essential parts, even at the last moment. The din is terrible, and every move is closely followed by curious onlookers. For it is on these craft and on their engines that mechanics and sponsors pin all their hopes. Some wish that the sea tomorrow will be as smooth as a board, and others wish it will be rough. We're in the English Channel and must be prepared for the bizarre weather conditions of the Atlantic and the North Sea. Here, an offshore race can become more like a rodeo, each boat a bucking bronco trying to throw its rider. As well as the English and American boats we have already met at Venice, Bellario, Viareggio, and in Spain, Doxford's Limit Up 77 and Ken Cassier's catamaran Yellow Drama, this time equipped with twin McLaren Chevrolet engines, we now have the American Willie Myers with his 35-foot cigarette Limit Up 78. American ace Joel Halpern with the very dangerous Beep Beep. Don Sheed's famous You Know What. Jack Cunningham's Macho. Charles Gill's I Like It Too. Henry Hector's G. And other well-known English racers. Of the 2 Italians who came over to give the British and American aces a good run for their money, only Guido Nicolai in his 38-foot Alitalia Ciga Hotel Picchiotti is able to take part. Francesco Cosentino fell sick on the eve of the race and was unable to participate. Among the entrants in the first class, that for the highest powered boats, no less than 10 have engines which develop over 1,200 horsepower. There are 26 contestants altogether in the first and second class races, and the same number, 26, in the third class round the Isle of Wight race, over a much shorter course, however. The English and Americans know very well that Alitalia Due is the boat they have to beat, and that is perhaps why they're hoping the sea will be calm in the morning. The briefing is given, in impeccable British style, by the English ace, Tommy Sopwith. The course, checkpoints, rescue facilities, and race regulations are all explained to crews with the help of diagrams and charts. Everyone must be present for the briefing. Failure to do so means being disqualified. The veteran Attilio Petroni, known on offshore racing circuits all over the world, is technical manager and strategist to the Alitalia Ciga Hotel team. With Sonny Levy, he was the first Italian to carry off a spectacular victory at Cowes in 1963. He won again many years later, in 71 in tandem with Ronnie Bonelli in Lady Nara, and also played a part in Carlo Bonomi's victories in Dry Martini in 72 and 74. Punctually at 10:30 the next morning, the first and second class boats are lined up for the start. They are followed an hour later by the other 26 in the third class. The regatta area is crowded with thousands of sailing and motor craft. The power boats, tearing along at crazy speeds, struggle to overtake, but above all to keep clear of each other. The sea has let us down again. It's calm, almost like it was at Venice. The battle between single hulls and catamarans is immediately on. Smooth water entices the drivers to go all out, to push their engines to the limit as they attempt to break records, but most of them have to give up with engine trouble. The same troubles overtake the third-class boats, so that only 6 finish the race. Doxford's Limit Up 77 and Willie Meyer's Limit Up 78 are immediately seen to be the most direct opponents of Guido Nicolai's Alitalia Due. But the gleaming Alitalia Due, flashing over the water, soon gets the better of them and sets off in hot pursuit of Ken Cassier's Yellow Drama. Keith Dallas, with his 30-foot Cougar Penthouse Rietzler, gives an excellent performance, but in the end has to give up and withdraw. The still waters, the frenetic pace, the unsuccessful attempts to overtake make it a very tough race. Alitalia Due, happier in more difficult seas, with Nicolai at the wheel, has to battle with Ken Cassier's catamaran, which is racing under ideal conditions. Yet Alitalia Due manages to sit on his tail right up to the finish and comes in a very close second, followed by Mike Doxford and Willie Myers. It has been a harder race than at Venice. In fact, of the 26 boats competing, none are left behind the leaders in either the first or second class. On November the 13th, the 1977 offshore powerboat season came to a close at Key West, the most southern of the Florida Keys. It points towards Cuba, some 90 miles to the south, and is perhaps the most beautiful of the Florida Keys. An atmosphere of great festivity reigns in this little city that the Americans call the Paris of the West. With its colonial-style buildings, it seems to be still living on its old southern charm. Key West has always been a favorite haunt for sportsmen and writers, like Ernest Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald, the painter John James Audubon. It is a paradise for fishermen, and particularly noted for its deep-sea fishing.
Back in 1965.
You need only take a trip around the old city on the coach train to realize why Hemingway decided to settle here, why 8 of his most famous novels were written here, why Key West is still the natural heir to the follies of the 20s, and so popular with tourists in search of curiosities, atmosphere, and excitement. This is the old Key West submarine base, now long out of use. Here, the usual eve of race preparations and briefing already make a colorful scene. The crews are all wearing overalls and windbreakers with their team colors. You can see the different club emblems and the advertising stickers. The Alitalia Chiga Hotel team is easily recognizable by their green windbreakers. This is the first time that a world championship will be held under the new International Motorboat Union rules. Competition for the prestigious title is open to the 3 best classified drivers in offshore powerboat classes from each continent. Competing this year are the finest drivers from America, South Africa, Australia, and Europe. Just as we have already seen at Venice and Cowes, the boats are in and out of the water several times for tests and checks. This time, briefing is held in the open air. A Coast Guard officer gives instructions to the crews that will be racing tomorrow, and also tells them how to fasten their life jackets in case of an accident while waiting to be picked up by the rescue helicopters. Representing Europe in the first class is the complete Alitalia Chiga Hotel team, with Francesco Cosentino and Guido Nicolai and the 2 magnificent Picchiotti 38-footers in light alloy. The Englishman, Mike Doxford, is there too, this time pinning his hopes on a 38-foot saffron-colored Cougar catamaran with the classic name Limit Up 77. In the second class, Keith Dallas from Great Britain is racing his 30-foot Cougar catamaran Penthouse Rietzler, sponsored by Roberta Di Camerino. The most formidable adversaries, apart from Doxford, are the United States aces, Joel Halpern in Beep Beep, Joey Ippolito with Natural Light, Bob Nordskog in the yellow 39-foot cigarette Powerboat Magazine Special, and a woman, Betty Cook, who came 3rd in the North American Championship with her black and white 38-foot Scarab, Karma. Betty Cook, known in racing circles as the Flying Granny, in spite of being only 53 years old, is a superb driver and will be hard to beat. It's 10 o'clock on the morning of November the 13th, the day of the grand final. The competitors get underway and move towards the starting zone. Picchiotti, Cobra, Scarab, Cigarette, Cougar, all between 10 and 12 meters long. With their 1,300 horsepower engines, they speed over the waves, followed overhead by aircraft and helicopters of the U.S. Coast Guard and TV cameramen from half the world. The mass start is incredibly spectacular. In the front row is Betty Cook in Karma, followed by Nicolai and Cosentino with the 2 Picchiotti boats Alitalia Uno and Alitalia Due, Joel Halpern with Beep Beep, Bob Nordskog with Powerboat Magazine Special, the Australian Peter Dean with Slingshot, and the present North American Championship holder, Joey Ippolito, in Natural Light. The second-class boats bring up the rear. The boats run along the main ship channel towards Sand Key and the open sea. On average, in 3 hours racing in a moderately choppy sea, a boat comes out of the water every 10 seconds, making about 1,000 leaps, which the pilot must counteract with continual body flexion, without ever missing the rhythm and without losing sight of the next wave ahead. The sea today is up to force 4-5, with steep cross waves. The boats attack them furiously. The impact is so violent that it will certainly be a very tough race. Although the course has been reduced to half on account of the wind, now blowing at over 30 knots, one by one the catamarans, with Doxford in the lead, have to give up. The Whistleboy checkpoint is the part most exposed to the full force of the ocean. Betty Cook leads, followed by Guido Nicolai, Joel Halpern, Bob Nordskog, and, a long way behind, the Australian Peter Dean in slingshot. Nicolai and Cosentino in Alitalia 2 and Alitalia 1 are now right behind Betty Cook, with Halpern following up. The waves are very high and the boats run in a continual seesaw movement with propellers running wild, near spinouts and perilous upending. Yet they manage to keep up a speed of 50 knots, over 90 kilometers an hour. In these conditions, the throttle is opened and closed at least 1,000 times during the race, in rhythm with the movement of the boat. Every pilot has his own technique, but the general rule is shut off the gas before taking the wave on the bow and give it as soon as the stern touches the water again. When the boat upends, that is, leaps up pointing towards the sky, then you give it full throttle and get it horizontal again. The most difficult moment for an offshore driver is when the boat falls back into the water from this position. Battered by a series of extremely heavy waves, Francesco Cosentino, although hit in the face several times, tries to continue the race, but is forced to retire. After Halpern passes Nicolai, the positions remain unchanged, and 53-year-old Betty Cook goes on to win her first World Championship, a truly spectacular victory. Halpern is second, and our own Nicolai third. He arrives escorted by the TV helicopters. His place on the rostrum reserved for the 1977 champions is justly deserved. Only 4 other boats managed to survive the battle with the Gulf Stream. Those driven by Bob Nordskog, Peter Dean, Kevin Wilde, and Dick DeWitt. so the curtain falls on another season of offshore powerboat racing. Next year, this struggle of men against the sea will be repeated with renewed passion and with boats and engines still more perfect and advanced in design. But what really counts is the spirit behind this sport. Let us hope it will always remain this way.